driving Gillingham to my car. I drive around a bit 'cause work isn't very far. I call my phone and I check my messages, but I don't have any messages. All I know, driving on drugs feels better when they're prescription. All I know is the world looks beautiful, the world looks so damn beautiful.
Hello and welcome to the Gator Football Podcast. I am Charles. As always, this is week 11, I guess we're on. Yeah, we're nearing the end. We have 2 games left. We have an FCS opponent coming up, and we have Florida State to finish the season at Florida State. But this last week we played University of Louisiana Lafayette, and this was an atrocious game. The Missouri game wasn't good, I grant you, and some of the games earlier this year against Bowling Green, for example, were also not so great. But this game was bad. Now, it was bad for a few reasons. I think we'll start with the special teams. I mean, first of all, of course, a block kick. There's not much to say about it. The guy just didn't protect well. It was just that shield didn't do the right thing there. The defensive tackle, I forget who it was, that was supposed to be on saying the block, just got beat and got faked out, and that's unfortunate. I mean, we made up for it with a touchdown through a block kick on our own side, but all the same, that was pretty bad. The defense is probably in the middle though. In terms of how they did, I think they did a pretty good job. They played well when they weren't making penalties, basically. That seems kind of simplistic, but when they weren't making mental errors, they did very well. The coverage was pretty good. There were a couple of broken tackles, and Matt Elam actually had a broken tackle, which is very rare for him. And I guess he showed his frustration at that by having a late hit a bit later in the game. But Matt Elam is gonna do what Matt Elam does, I suppose. And it's unfortunate that we saw what we did, but I think the tackling hopefully will get better. And I know there's probably not a lot of room left for the tackling to get better, but it's gonna have. Hopefully, it's gonna happen. It's gonna be cleaned up for the Florida State game. So we saw some bad tackling, but one thing we did see, which I was actually very apprehensive about seeing, was some of the linebacker play by Bob Bostic was really iffy. He missed some reads regarding whether or not it was a pass or a run. He played to the point where he was getting himself blocked out on some plays. When he really had the opportunity to make some successful plays, and he wasn't there because he had made the wrong call and he just got himself blocked out. And that was iffy for him because he's been such a mixed bag this year. At times he'll completely do a great play and he'll get behind the line. He'll know exactly what to do, and then he'll follow that up with a bit more of a mediocre kind of thing where he'll miss something really badly and you'll wonder what happened. And it's unfortunate. I mean, it wasn't just Bostic. I mean, it wasn't Elam. It seemed like everyone on the defense really just had most of the defense played very well throughout most of the game, but whenever we had some kind of breakdown, it seemed like ULL really took advantage of it. Louisiana Lafayette took advantage of it. I mean, Purefoy on one play didn't read the play action correctly, so he got burned deep. I mean, he didn't get burned. He just missed a tackle, as I recall. He just missed his man, and Watkins missed coverage on one of the long passes, and that was just straight up his mistake. It just seemed like, first of all, University of Louisiana Lafayette was basically running the Missouri offense, if you couldn't tell. They skinned pretty close to what Missouri ran, and instead of their quarterback having a gimpy leg, he was playing full strength. Now, you may say, well, even a gimped out Missouri quarterback with a Missouri offense is stronger than University of Louisiana Lafayette, and I would say, yeah, that's probably true. But I think the calling of plays, looking over, checking plays, I think that advantaged calling to our defense was really effective, and I don't think we were necessarily checking to what could have been being audible there. I think we need to kind of rotate. I think we were just staying with our base defense most of the time, and I'm not sure if we were adjusting appropriately when ULL did adjust. And I mean, I'm not sure exactly what was going on there, but it did seem clear that University of Louisiana Lafayette was scheming very well for this game. They were scheming very well to our defense, and hopefully they will be one of the few people that do that because uh, that is our strength, and hopefully that will be a one-time kind of deal. So yeah, that's what I have to say. There's not a lot to say about the defense. They did play a very good game. If it wasn't for those penalties, and penalties play a part, but I consider penalties to be more breakdowns of discipline rather than lack of skill or lack of playing hard or lack of really doing the assignment correctly. That's a mental lapse, which that those happen. It's just hopefully they don't happen at the wrong time, and hopefully they don't have negative repercussions. But these ones tended to be pretty serious. So, I mean, the defense is, I think, still very good in our minds. I think the problem is what we all know is the offense, and I think there's a tendency by Florida fans to blame offensive parts in ways that don't always make sense. So Muschamp actually talked about this a little. He says when there's sacks, people blame the offensive line, but that's not always the truth. And he's very true. He's very correct with that. I think when you when you watch the tape, I think it becomes clear what's going on. So I took a ton of notes. I watched the ULL game completely over again, watched every single offensive drive, which was quite painful. And these are the conclusions I came to. First of all, Jordan Reed is not great at blocking. He gets beaten inside on a couple blocks. I forget who was playing right tackle, but the right tackle and Halapio are blocking their guys into the lanes Gillisley's heading towards. We see a perimeter block by Gillisley that's brought back by a Reed hold that was useless because it was way away from where the play was happening. We see stuff like that. And the ULL was basically running two defensive sets as far as I can. They were running a nickel package with two linebackers, and they were running basically a 4-4 kind of package where they had four guys in the linebacker spot, four guys on the line. And that was basically the exact same defense people have been running at us now. And, we've been schemed to. That's the reality. We have been schemed to. And it's on the offensive coaches to prevent that from happening. Where if we get schemed to, we get shut down. To that end, I don't like the empty set, the 5-receiver empty set. I don't like it because it makes our defense a lot easier to defend. We are saying what we're going to do. We don't want to run Driscoll right at teams. That's not something we want to do particularly. So what do they do? Well, they rush 4. University of Louisiana Lafayette rushing 4 is actually the wrong decision. That's something you don't want to do. You want to blitz the quarterback. You want to blitz Driscoll. That's the thing you want to do. You want to contain on him, and blitz the quarterback, and basically shrink his time down. And when we saw that, we saw them get we didn't see them do that blitz too often, which we saw it happen sometimes, but usually they were getting blitzes on 4-man rushing. Now, let me break that down. When you have 5 SEC offensive linemen being unable to stop a 4-man rush from a Sunbelt team, you can't block their basic defensive line, that's really depressing. And that was just really bad. And we saw decent O-line protection at times with the 4-man rush, and we saw some decent coverage from ULL prevent bigger gains. But we also saw plays go right by their secondary. Reed had a nice catch, even though Dunbar was running open deep. We would completely give up. It's weird. This is what I think I've gathered from Florida offensive line. It seems like we're bad at pass blocking on the tackles, and we're bad at run blocking in the center and the 2 guards. Now, part of that could be injury, but part of that is also bad play, and that is really unfortunate. We had some success perimeter blocking, largely because their defensive line not as fast as an SEC defensive line. So we saw some great plays like the bubble screen work because they were, you know, if you're gonna defensive scheme, if you're gonna scheme defensively for Florida, what do you do? Well, I think the real key is to force the Florida to execute a long series of drives. So don't let Florida get the easy run pickups, of easy run first downs. Force them to execute through the air a full dink and dunk style drive. And we couldn't do that. And sometimes it was sacks. Sometimes Driscoll would throw a bad ball. Sometimes Driscoll would have the ball get dropped because Dunbar dropped a long pass that was in his hands, even though he was held, which whatever. And Driscoll, okay, Driscoll, I think the Driscoll Brissett thing is going to come up, but I think Driscoll did a pretty good job escaping the linebacker blitz. Sometimes during this game when they would send it, when we threw out of non-empty sets, because that's when when we threw out non-empty sets, when we threw out empty sets, they didn't send a linebacker blitz usually. When we threw out of a non-empty set kind of spread offense, they would occasionally send the linebacker blitz. And we'd miss the blitz. We wouldn't pick up a man. We double team one guy and one guy would go free. And Driscoll tended to do a pretty good job. Why? Because they're not as fast as SEC linemen. The ULL team's not as fast as SEC linemen. The linebackers aren't fast as SEC linebackers. So what happened? Well, Driscoll could escape those guys. Sometimes he didn't, but usually he seemed to be pretty successful at that. And so we just see problems on the O-line where we just see missed assignments, and that results in tackles for loss. It results in a crappy running game, and we just see some problems. We see Driscoll picking the wrong player, the risk picking the wrong receiver, and then he'll throw off target and into coverage when we have someone like Trey Burton wide open. And then, we see Driscoll then do a good play where he'll get the ball out to Gillisley on a blindside blitz, where he's getting blitzed on his blind side. He feels the pressure and gets the ball out. But, even then, there was no chance for that ball to be a first down. Like, stuff like that. It's really weird, And even on the long pass, the pass was not great, but Dunbar could have come down with it. And it's just like, we're just seeing some, Gillisley, who usually is, I really like, misread a bunch of kind of holes. He constantly, he wants to run between the tackles. He's told to run between the tackles. But usually the real thing he should be doing is bouncing to the outside because the linebackers are covering the inside gaps. So if he plows through a linebacker, which he's never really shown that much aptitude for, he can spin out and prevent a tackle for a loss, but he's never been the kind of guy to just go through a guy like Trent Richardson. He gets stopped. And, we see Trey Burton doing the sweep with Hines, and it's more effective because the defense just has to cover more of the field. Even when Jeff Driscoll does the zone read, they just have to cover more of the field. It's just part of it. Also, the blocking's a bit easier on those zone reads. So when they just have to kind of do the same thing, they don't really have to worry about kicking the blitz or, worrying about guys coming in weird ways on a run blitz. For that we actually see them do okay. We saw Driscoll miss open mans pretty much all throughout the game. That stuff happened. Dunbar did play well, except for that long drop though, that long pass that he dropped. He caught a few high passes pretty well. He laid out for a Jacoby Brissett touchdown pass. It seems to be so much that's inconsistent about this team, where you'll have one part do well, another part will break down. One part will do well, the other part will break down. So when we saw a screen pass, we'd finally get our screen pass game going. All of a sudden, screen pass was covered, perimeter blocking not there. There you go. Just can't do anything. Driscoll's got to somehow he can't really do anything about that. He can maybe check down to a different receiver, but that's really hard to do on a screen when you're setting it up with the guys coming right at you. We saw sacks as a result of just crappy blocking on most of the offensive line. it was just such a mixed bag. We saw Driscoll get sacked because he felt the pressure too early, and there was an open running back in the flat, and it was on a 4-man rush, and Driscoll just took the sack. He tried to escape a pocket that he really didn't have to. He could have flipped it out to Gillisley, who had like a 8-yard cushion between the guy who was probably covering him, and Gillisley could have at least tried to pick up 4 yards maybe. I mean, we see just this kind of weird mix of just occasionally they'll get it right, but usually something goes wrong. And it's because that it's just there's a few things I trust. One of which is we usually have good perimeter blocking. That's why the bubble screens tend to work. We usually have good perimeter blocking. That's solid. We tend to have decent short yard passing when Driscoll makes the read correctly. The our receivers are good enough to not drop these short passes too often. Dunbar has shown a pretty good aptitude. I trust a portion of our line to run block and a portion to pass block. Unfortunately, they're different portions. The O-line, gets no push against a defensive line that outnumbers them. Though it's to some degree it's that simple. When you have 5 offensive linemen, maybe 6, maybe you bring in the other tackle. You have 6 offensive linemen against and even let's put on the fullback too. So you have 7 players, and then you have the running back. If you are against a 4-4 stack, guess what? You can't block everybody. So best case scenario, you block mostly everyone, and the guy you didn't block is away from the play. That's your best case scenario. You get maybe 4 yards before the safety comes up to make the tackle. And that was the problem we were seeing. And I think we are seeing that our receivers aren't bad, because when we are doing the long passes, even though when they were dropped, wide open. And when we see the edge get sealed, we see solid sweeps. It's just we try to keep trying to do these inside runs. But the reality is the defenses are bunched to anticipate that, because they don't think we can do anything else in a game. And honestly, we haven't really shown the ability to do a whole lot else in the game. So the idea is, and this is how I think how coach should come in, if we can score more than 14 points, we can beat Florida. Because they're thinking if we score 17, they'll have a hard time scoring 17. And I think most of the time, I think that's that's not dumb on their part, but I think they're overestimating their offense's chance against this defense. So very rarely it took a punt block to get this score. Otherwise, yeah, University of Louisiana Lafayette is not doing too well. If Driscoll doesn't go out and that punt doesn't get blocked, this game probably is a win by a couple touchdowns. I'll admit to that. I think Jacoby Brissett coming in cold is never easy. He did okay, but he didn't do that great either. I mean, this is just the problem we're seeing, is that our plays are too easy to anticipate. And this is one play we haven't seen at all this year, which I don't get. We haven't seen a play from the shotgun where the running back is right next to Jeff Driscoll and does a dive. We haven't seen a dive from the shotgun where it wasn't in the pistol, which, I'm not a huge fan of the dive. Don't get me wrong. I don't think the dive is the answer. But a lot of the time, I think we probably should, with this offensive line, I think we should be spreading guys out into the nickel and having Gillisley run at a play where they can't potentially cover every hole. At best you might have, if you have Jeff there too, you have the risk of the zone read. So at the very least, the linebackers can't just only key in on the running back, or they could potentially get gashed on the zone read. So we sometimes do see the zone read, but we never just see the straight up give. And I think that's the answer for some of these couple yard gains that we keep missing, because it just isn't working. I think we need to clear out the linebacker core of these teams by getting into the spread. You play teams with the team you have. You play games with the team you have, not the team you want. We don't have the team right now that can, an offensive line that will just plow 3 yards ahead to give that room to Gillisley. We don't have a running back who is able to make up for the offensive line we do currently have. It's just a bad situation right now. And these 4-4 sets are just that's all we're gonna see. And I think Jacoby Brissett, we're gonna see him later this week, this coming week, and he throws an okay ball. He also throws a mediocre ball. He even on his near touchdown pass to Jordan Reed had to scoop it out, and on the catch by Dunbar had a layout. So I don't think Jacoby Brissett. We see the sack. One sack was on the O-line. It was on the left tackle with Jacoby Brissett. And sometimes Jacoby Brissett has a clean pocket and he runs out to get sacked. Which is the offensive line supposed to feel without that one? So it's just a combination of really inconsistent play throughout the entire team on offense. The defense, at the very least, they'll have one guy maybe take a play off or do something kind of wrong, but the vast majority of the time, they're completely on the same page and they're shutting people down. The offense, you have multiple players at the same time not doing the right thing. So what happens? That team is super easy to shut down. And I wish I could say it's any more complicated. It's not. I think to some degree it could have been worse. I think if Louisiana Lafayette had blitzed on the empty set, I think this would have been a worse game, because I think we still have shown very little ability to pick up the blitz. So, I mean, it's tough to talk about more. I mean, there's really not. Everyone saw what happened. We play an FCS team this week with Jacoby Brissett probably starting. Then we have FSU. I think the real key is I want to see Florida get back to fundamentals against this Jacksonville State. I think that's the most important thing. Get back to basic blocking assignment fundamentals. Get back to picking up the blitz. Get back to medium passing game. Get all the basic stuff. You don't have to worry about beating Jacksonville State through the air, through long pass. I don't care if we do, then it's worse than I thought. But we shouldn't have to. Basically, this should be a game where we can focus on the fundamentals and still pick up a bunch of yards on the ground. So in the end, that's how I see it. Hopefully, Florida comes out and does something I haven't seen for a while, which is just play angry and crap all over someone on offense. But it's hard to say. I think we have some injuries at the offensive line position, but still, there's really no excuse for this last game. So, what you gonna do, I guess? Going forward, I hope we improve, but I am not too hopeful about this team right now. They have a lot of wins, but wins are not a QB statistic, as they say in the NFL, I suppose. Or as you can say for Greg McElroy or AJ McCarron, I suppose, as well. So in the end, I'm go Gators, but it's hard to do this week. That's a tough thing. As long as I guess we got the win, so people are gonna ignore us in lieu of Alabama, basically crapping the bet against A&M. But this is a tough game to sit through. So I'll catch you guys next week. Hopefully Jacksonville State is easily taken care of, but who's to say for sure. So see you guys next week. Go Gators.
I can see the day unfold in front of me, so I take the stairs and hit the gym. The phone is ringing when I get to my desk. What was the stinging, now a sharp pain in my chest. So I take a calm and next and just chill. And then it's time for lunch again. All I know is work is easy when you don't stress out about deadlines. All I know is to take my medicine. I always take my medicine. And I feel fantastic, and I never felt as good as how I do right now. Except for maybe when I think of how I felt that day, when I felt the way that I do right now. Right now, I feel fantastic, and I never felt as good as how I do right now. Except for maybe when I think of how I felt that day, when I felt the way that I do right now. Right now, right now, right now, right now, right now, right now, right now. Sometimes I'd like to slow things down, enjoy the moment. When I look, the moment's gone. Work is over. over, but I can't stay to work late. Gotta leave and get ready for my second date with a pretty girl that I met at the pharmacy. Writing the prescription line, I take a pill for my social anxiety. I get a table and a nice bottle of Chablis. Now it's getting late and there's still no sign of her. I have another glass of wine, all I know is the wine lasts longer when you don't gotta share it with someone. All I know is the steak tastes better when I take my steak tastes better pill. And I feel fantastic, and I never felt as good as how I do right now. Except for maybe when I think of how I felt that day, when I felt the way that I do right now, right now. I feel fantastic, and I never felt as good as how I do right now. Except for maybe when I think of how I felt that day, when I felt the way that I do right now, right now, right now.